When you hear the word empire, what comes to mind? Probably a mighty ruler, right? Like the Roman Emperor or the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. But the Habsburg Empire was different. It wasn't ruled by one person, it was ruled by a family. For nearly 600 years, this one dynasty shaped the fate of Europe. A family whose power stretched across continents, whose bloodlines ran deep, and whose obsession with keeping that bloodline pure led to their downfall. Welcome to History X Videos. The story begins in Switzerland. The Habsburg name comes from a castle there, and the earliest ancestor we know of was a man called Guntram the Rich. But their real rise started around the late 1200s, when they moved into what's now Austria. From there, their influence exploded. At their peak, the Habsburgs ruled lands stretching from England in the north to Serbia in the south, and from Portugal all the way to Poland. They even held territories in the Americas, Africa, and Asia. This wasn't just an empire of land. It was an empire built through marriage, politics, and power plays. They didn't conquer everyone with swords. Sometimes they just said, "I do." One of the earliest turning points came with Rudolf of Habsburg. He became king of the Germans in 1273, but not everyone was happy about that, especially King Ottokar II of Bohemia. The two clashed, and Rudolf ended up taking control of Austria, laying the foundation for centuries of Habsburg dominance. From that moment, Vienna became the beating heart of the dynasty, the capital of what would later be known as the House of Austria. Over the centuries, the Habsburgs used clever marriages to expand their reach. Rudolf's descendants gained territories in Hungary, Bohemia, Spain, and beyond, not always by war, but by simply marrying into other royal families. In fact, there was a famous saying in Europe, "Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry." That one sentence pretty much sums up their entire strategy. But this obsession with keeping power in the family came with a price. The Habsburgs became notorious for inbreeding. They wanted to keep their royal bloodline exclusive, but that led to generations of health problems. One of the most visible signs was the famous Habsburg jaw, a protruding chin so distinct that even modern scientists can spot it in portraits. By the time of Charles II of Spain, things got tragic. He was so severely deformed and sickly that some historians believe he could barely eat or speak properly. Others suggest he might even have been intersex. He became the symbol of the Habsburg decline, proof that centuries of intermarriage had taken their toll. But before that downfall, there were golden years, especially under Maximilian I, known as the Last Knight. He ruled during the early Renaissance and was the perfect mix of a medieval warrior and a forward-thinking visionary. Maximilian loved art, science, and new ideas. He surrounded himself with scholars and engineers, dreaming of a modern empire that blended culture and conquest. But there was one problem: money. Even Machiavelli admired Maximilian's ambition, but pointed out that he was terrible at managing his finances. His big dreams often emptied the treasury. Still, his legacy lived on through his family's marriages. His son Philip married Joanna of Castile, daughter of the King of Aragon. That union would soon bring Spain into Habsburg hands, and with it, the New World. Then came Charles V, the ultimate Habsburg powerhouse. By the time he was 16, Charles ruled more of Europe than almost anyone before him. Spain, the Netherlands, Austria, parts of Italy, and massive territories in the Americas. His motto was plus ultra, Latin for further beyond, and that's exactly what he did. Under Charles, the sun literally never set on the Habsburg Empire. But ruling such a vast kingdom came with challenges. Religious tensions were rising. Martin Luther's ideas were spreading fast, splitting Europe between Catholics and Protestants. Charles tried to keep the church united, but the divide kept growing. Then came wars with France, rebellions at home, and alliances with enemies like the Ottomans. Even Charles couldn't hold it all together. Eventually, he split the empire, giving Austria and the Holy Roman Empire to his brother Ferdinand, and Spain and its colonies to his son Philip II. That division would mark the beginning of the end. The next few centuries were filled with religious wars, political struggles, and rulers who simply couldn't keep up. Ferdinand II's strict Catholic rule sparked the 30 Years' War, one of the most devastating conflicts in European history. Millions died, and the empire was left weakened. Then came the War of Spanish Succession, the Austrian Succession, and finally, the revolutions of 1848, a wave of change that the old Habsburg world just couldn't handle. Even enlightened rulers like Maria Theresa and her son Joseph II tried modern reforms, but they still clung to the old dynastic mindset. By the time the First World War erupted in 1914, the Habsburg Empire was a shadow of its former self, and when the war ended, so did 6 centuries of Habsburg rule. The Habsburg story is one of ambition, power, and irony. They mastered the art of building an empire without constant war, only to destroy it from within through pride, politics, and genetics. From castles in Switzerland to crowns across Europe, their legacy shaped the continent for generations. And today, their story stands as a reminder that even the mightiest empires can crumble when power becomes a family obsession.